So power rankings for Super Rugby round 12. Interesting set of results this week, kind of mean. There's a fair few teams who do not move, and a fair few teams who kind of shuffle around in the middle. But let's have a look. Star 15, naturally no change. On the bye, some Wolves. I keep saying if they can get it right, they'll get a win. They played well in the tour in New Zealand, but not well enough to get any points. See how they go at home next week. Next, the Blues at 14. They managed to pick up a win over the Waratahs, which was good. It was close. It was away. Still not quite enough to bump them up a spot. But I will say that this team... the Brumbies, none of these teams have moved, by the way, in 13th. I've got these guys neck and neck. The only reason I haven't let the Blues pass the Brumbies is because the Brumbies are kind of the incumbent on 13. So they're exactly the same on my calculations. Their records are 3 wins, 7 losses for the Blues, 3 wins, 6 losses for the Brumbies. But in terms of the way I look at things, these guys are exactly the same. So it's not going to be much for the Blues to finally get out of 14th. They got the Hurricanes next week, so... next, another team had a bye. So we've got 3 teams kind of at the bottom on the bye this week. The Reds, nothing doing for them. They are the same. So yeah, that's our bottom row. 3 Aussie Conference teams, which isn't ideal. Next, speaking of Aussie Conference teams, down 2 spots is the Melbourne Rebels. Can you believe I had these guys at the top of my board not that long ago? Record is now 4-6-0, so kind of firmly in the negative side of the ledger. Really disappointing loss against the Crusaders. The coach came out and said in the press conference afterwards that he didn't think they could win. And yeah, he was right. Wonder if that's the pep talk he gave to his players, because bit of a capitulation in the second half. Not good to get beaten by that much at home. One would have hoped they would have at least kind of showed a bit more character, but not to be. So the rot continues. We'll see if they've got what it takes to turn things around after a promising start to the season. Next, down 3 spots. So the biggest loser this week is the Bulls. The Bulls, despite having a narrow loss against the Highlanders, have just had another loss against the Stormers. So their record also 4-6-0, kind of sits firmly in the negative. It's going to take a couple of good results for them to turn things around. You'd have to say they're there or thereabouts. And they do show encouraging passages of play every time they play. Even when they were in New Zealand, they still didn't look bad at any point. So... yeah, we'll see how well they go for the rest of the season. Signs are promising. For the Sharks, speaking of promising, they are up 2 spots. Record now 4-5-1, so just 1 away from kind of getting things even Stevens. Much needed win over a strong Highlanders team, so that's definitely a big morale booster. It saved their season from possible doom, so... we'll see if they can keep it up. As I said in the review of the last game, they're a real Jekyll and Hyde team at the moment. So we'll see which team shows up next week. If it's the good one, then they should be able to pick up some points, but you never know. Next, and up 2 spots, are the Stormers. So they're at 5-6-0, 5 home games, 5 home wins, 6 away games, 6 away losses. That is the story of the Stormers season. If they can somehow figure how to get things done on the road, they will be a force to be reckoned with, but still not quite there yet. Next, and up 1 spot, making it into the second row for what should be pretty much the first time, the Jaguares are on a really good run of 4 wins on the trot, all on tour. So speaking of saving their season, they've definitely done that with this tour. If they'd gone into this season and picked up 1 win out of 3, it would have been all done and dusted. But they've come together as a group. They've got a game plan working. Their defence looks really solid. And yeah, positive record, 6-5-0. So onwards and upwards for the Jaguares. They've got a bye coming up. So hopefully that doesn't take any of the kind of momentum away from them and they can keep things up for the rest of the season. Next, No change for the Waratahs. Really, really, really disappointing home loss against the Blues. Could not get it over the line despite having numerous chances. Their record is still better than most with, there's still kind of 2 games on the positive side of the ledger with 5 wins and 3 losses. But, yeah, they're not looking like a contender at this point. People are going on about how, top Aussie team loses to bottom New Zealand team. Yeah, that's true. But as I said in the review, the Waratahs beat the Stormers and the Stormers beat the Blues. So there's the ability there. There just seems to be a skills or mental execution block at the moment when they play New Zealand teams. They just can't get the job done. So I still feel like the potential's there for it to come together, but it's just not happening. Next, also no change, is the Lions. So their record now 6-5-0, only 1 win on the positive side of the ledger. So kind of disconcerting times if you're a Lions supporter, because this was a team which was virtually all-conquering last season and looks a bit far from it so far this season. So they've still got 1 game to come on their tour of New Zealand. So fingers crossed they can get kind of things back in order before they head back to South Africa. Next, also no change. The Chiefs had a home loss against the Jaguars. So it's not often a team goes into the Chiefs country and gets a win. So it's pretty disappointing for the Chiefs, but they were pretty well outplayed in that game. Record now sits at 6-3-0. So still, 3 games, kind of on the good side of the ledger. But yeah, that they've not looked a complete team, because they're not a complete team with all the guys they got out. But yeah, there still seems to be just a bit lacking there. It could just be that, this injury toll is kind of catching up with them as the season goes on. Guys who were able to put in a stellar performance at the start of the season and maybe not able to keep up that kind of same power. Next, same as the Highlanders. Now, they got thrashed kind of by the Sharks on this weekend just gone. But if you look at it, it's interesting. Highlanders, Chiefs, Lions, Waratahs all lost. So it's kind of hard for anyone to take anyone over when they're all losing at that level. And there is definitely a kind of a divide between these teams in the way I'm calculating the power rankings. Like the Sunwolves are off at the bottom. Then there's a chasing pack of kind of the dregs, which kind of cuts off at about the Rebels, because the Rebels are just in terrible form. Then there's this kind of middle pack, which goes up till perhaps now even the Highlanders, because there are 2 teams who are just kind of a cut above. And that would be the Crusaders, who had a big win over in Melbourne over a Rebels team really struggling for form, and they did not let that foot off the throat. They kept the Rebels on the floor. Tight first half, but it was still looking like the Crusaders were more dangerous, and they really, really cut them up in the second half. And yeah, that leaves us with the Hurricanes on the top. Both these guys have got 8 wins. Just the Hurricanes 1 loss, the Crusaders the 2. But both these teams, the last time they lost seems like pretty much ancient history right now. And yeah, in terms of a final, that would seem to be the 2 best teams at the moment anyway. So we'll see how things go forward. No team is invincible, but yeah, it's going to take some big performances from some teams at the bottom to kind of to turn things around. I should also say that the Highlanders and the Chiefs, like the Brumbies and the Blues, are absolutely neck and neck. The only reason I've still got the Highlanders still at 3 with that thrashing they got is because they're kind of the incumbent from last week. Otherwise, I would have the Chiefs there. So pretty much even Stevens. So yeah, that's it from me. What do you guys reckon? Too high, too low, too generous, too harsh? I'll probably have to look at the way I calculate them as I keep going forward. I'm going to leave the calculations the same for this season. I'm just going to stick with the same formula so it remains consistent. But you know, I'm always keen to take feedback on how you guys think things are going, and I'm looking at it myself and seeing areas where it could perhaps be better, so I'll look at that going forward. Anyway, that's it from me, as I said, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.